I recorded close to 50 minutes about this show off the top of my head, and what I realized after doing this is I miss talking about some stuff. By scripting this out, it's a good way to condense my rambling, and hopefully I can add on to my thoughts. I just want to state this from the start. I do like this show. I realize after writing most of this, I'm pretty critical, more critical than maybe I would like. My goal with this video is to take a more broad look at All of Us Are Dead. I'm not planning on going from plot point to plot point. Instead, I'm going to be covering things in sections, like talking about the characters and the ending. Now, let's get some of the basic stuff out of the way. All of Us Are Dead is a Korean-made Netflix-produced zombie show. This show reminds me of another Korean zombie Netflix show called Kingdom, even though that show happens at the turn of the 15th century to the 16th century. My advice, because this show has an English dub of it, and many of you are probably like me, and English versions of stuff are just easier to follow, feel free to do this. But in the scenes that have high emotional stuff happening in them, switch to the Korean, the emotion comes through much more. I have this opinion with another Netflix show called Barbarians. There's a speech in that show that hits different in its original German. Part of the reason the Korean hits better is the actors in the show did a great job. As for the setting of the show, it's a bunch of kids who are at a school when a zombie outbreak happens. It's your typical zombie survival show, but with some twists that make it interesting. It's different than American zombie shows like The Walking Dead. After the zombie outbreak happens, the whole country doesn't just fall apart instantly. The South Korean military actually tries to handle the situation and is working to contain and solve the zombie problem. First, let me talk about what makes this show fairly unique as a zombie show. Let's go over something that seems to be a near universal in zombie media, of which I'm not extremely well versed in, but I've watched quite a bit. This is headshots being the only way to kill zombies. In this show, zombies need to take hits to the neck to go down, otherwise zombies are very durable and take lots of hits. Like zombies can fall out of buildings and be fine. A second thing that separates this show is a few people who get bit do not turn into full-on zombies. They turn into something in between. This is a mutation in the zombie virus that lets a person think and act like a normal person, but these mutants will get cravings for human flesh that gets worse the longer it seems they go without munching on people. Also, these mutants, when they bite someone, will turn them into zombies. One person who gets bit turns into a mutant, but this is luck because someone else gets bit by a mutant and they just turn into a normal zombie. If you're a fan of how The Walking Dead does things, this may not fly with you, but all this does add another element to the show. Let's go over the biggest positive of the show, the main group of characters at the school. What we get here is a group of people who all know each other. Some really know each other very well. This means when one of them gets bit, you can feel the impact throughout the whole group. As well, the romantic relationships between the two couples is good. It should not be surprising that the four important characters, Chung-sun, Hanjo, Nam-ra, and Sui Hook. Man, I really hope I got that right. I have to say this name a lot. These are the ones with the romance. These four also have their place as the most important characters of the show. Nam-ra is the smart one, who comes up with plans, and she sees through a plot by somebody in the group. Sui Hook, he's the best fighter of the group. He really steps up in important situations and saves a few people. As well, he is compassionate. I know he likes Nam-ra, but there's no reason in a zombie outbreak for him to have stuck up for her like that. Nam-ra gets a bit, and she shows signs of turning, but then doesn't turn. Nam-ra is one of those who is an in-between zombie. She has the mutated zombie virus. Sui Hook should be really thankful that his compassion did not come back to bite him later on. As well, Sui Hook acts like a wingman for Chung-sun. With Chung-sun being brought up, let's go over him. Honestly, Chung-sun is the hardest to nail down, which is strange, because Chung-sun is basically the main character for most of the show. Chung-sun is the one to go off and risk his life to accomplish tasks to help out the group. Like when Chung-sun goes to get the phone to help with escape. He also loses more than any other character. Chung-sun loses his best friend and his mom. Last, we have Anjo. She is very interesting. By the end of the show, she is the most important character. Anjo adds knowledge to the group about survival because of what her dad taught her. She is in the main relationship in the show. This is between her and Chung-sun. What makes this group so interesting is their ability to problem solve as a group, like the creating of a bathroom, to the plan of walling off half the room with tables and chairs and playing music on one side to lure in zombies so they could run out the other door. It's really fun to watch clever characters in action. One thing that is done so well is how all the friendships, rivalries, and hidden feelings end up being brought out by this disaster. An example is Guinam. He becomes an even worse person when the outbreak happens. With both romances in the show, they start after the zombie outbreak happens. Sui Hook definitely is interested in Namra before the zombie outbreak. The show makes it extremely clear that Chung-sun is interested in Anjo before the outbreak. Na-yeon's dislike for Kyung-soo is even hinted at before the zombies happen. Another impressive thing is there is a large cast. Most characters in the show have at least something interesting they end up doing. Like the nerd in the group, who I really had little expectations for, had a very heroic ending. There is one side character that is just confusing to me. Na-yeon. She is played as an absolute villain in the first episodes of the show, but later on the writers try and redeem her. I'll be talking about this in depth, and it's going to take a bit to recap the events, so hang with me. When the zombie outbreak happens, all the kids, after some shenanigans, end up in the school's radio club rooms. A recording room and a tech room, this is the one where the soundboard is. Importantly, these rooms are connected. This is the second place the kids hold up in. Na-yeon, the whole time throughout this outbreak, has been in the background, complaining, and just not being very helpful. But back to the recording room. A zombie is hanging off the rope the kids used to climb into the recording room, and Chung-seung and his friend Kyung-soo are trying to stop the zombie from getting into the room. Kyung-soo ends up getting scratched and hit in the face, giving him a bloody nose. A bloody nose is a sign of being infected by a zombie. Na-yeon freaks out and claims that Kyung-soo got bit and wants him out of the room. Kyung-soo protests and a fight happens. We learn Na-yeon hates Kyung-soo because he's on welfare, because she has a superiority complex. A teacher steps in and has Kyung-soo go in the recording room in case he turns. Kyung-soo is stubborn and says he'll stay in there for an hour instead of 10 minutes because he's stubborn. Eventually, the teacher tells Na-yeon to go in and apologize. Na-yeon goes in and takes her handkerchief and wipes Kyung-soo's cut, but does not apologize. This starts a big fight, and Na-yeon insists that Kyung-soo is going to turn, and suddenly, he does start to show all the signs of turning. Kyung-soo does turn. Chung-sun gets his zombified friend to run at him. Chung-sun is on the window's edge and jumps to the rope, and his friend goes out the window. Everyone in the room is confused and in shock at what just happened. Na-yeon is gloating that she was right the whole time and she should have been listened to. But this is where Namra comes in and says while everyone was looking in the other room, when the teacher went in to try to get Kyung-soo out, Na-yeon went and wiped her handkerchief with some zombie blood from a broom that had been used to try and fight a zombie. Remember what Na-yeon did. She wiped Kyung-soo's scratches with her handkerchief that had zombie blood on it, infecting him. Na-yeon ends up leaving the room because nobody wants her in there with them, and the teacher, after saying some stuff about never take a life, runs after Na-yeon. We're led to believe both were probably infected by the zombies. But it turns out a few episodes later, Na-yeon is alive and in a supply room with food and drinks. This supply room is attached to the choir room. This choir room is the third place the group of kids end up holding out in after the radio room. Na-yeon is in there, and we see she is about to open the door to the other kids, and they would get food, but Na-yeon overhears a conversation some of the kids are having about her. One kid calls her subhuman for what she did to Kyung-soo, so she does not open the door. She locks it, and when the kids try and open it, she keeps it locked. Now later when the kids run to the roof of the school, the fourth place they hold up at, Na-yeon still feels guilty over what she has done and gets a bag of food and drinks and is going to try and get to the rest of the kids. Na-yeon remembers something the teacher told her after she left, that she could rejoin and make things right. Na-yeon does not make it to the kids on the roof. What is so difficult about the show trying to redeem Na-yeon is that she had a chance to open the door when all the other kids were in the choir room, but she does not because of what they said about her. She did not do the right thing when it was hard. She would have had to confront her classmates, but she would have helped them out. Instead, she decided to act when it was easier. There is no immediate confrontation. I guess Na-yeon was going to face more personal risk, but that was her own fault. There's no reason to think, once she left the room, she would have ran at the first sign of trouble, running right back to safety. She had acted selfish before, but she gets jumped by Guinam, the bad guy, and did not get a chance to really do anything. There could also be the potential the writers were not really thinking about her being redeemed or not, but having Na-yeon be more of a statement about human nature. We see Na-yeon struggling with her past actions, and lack of action. She seems to be thinking about if she can rejoin the group and be let in. Na-yeon is probably the most complex character in the show. I'm about to do something I'm not really sure you're supposed to do on YouTube, which is say I don't know after writing about 900 words on a character. I don't know what the writer's purpose was for Na-yeon. Was she meant to be redeemed or not? Is redemption even what the writers were trying to talk about? Or is it something else? Or is Na-yeon's point to just make this kind of debate actually happen? Now that I think about it, probably. I would really love to know what other people think about Na-yeon. Nice, I get to do the YouTuber thing where they always ask people to leave comments, so I guess go do that. There's another side character that is interesting. Jamin is one of the girls in the group. Jamin is the one that when Namra got bit wanted her out, and eventually she got used to the fact that Namra was mostly in control and would not start snacking on everyone. Later on, when all the kids leave the roof and end up running to the gym, what happens during the run is one girl falls and has a zombie on her. Jamin is there and she has a makeshift weapon and looks like she's going to hit the zombie, but then just turns and bolts. The interesting thing is, there really isn't anything I saw in the show that would show us that Jamin caves under pressure or was not willing to help with fighting the zombies. Jamin does help with fighting zombies in the first and second episode. Now, this does happen to people. Even if someone has shown they can handle intense situations before, they don't always hold up. The reason I mention this is I remember reading about a World War I soldier who had held up under shelling for years, but one time just broke and ran, and after that one time, he could handle it again. So my point is this in the realm of possibility? Yes. But for something like a TV show, it would be nice to see the characters struggle with something over the course of the show, and then be able to overcome their problems or not. This is what makes characters in shows interesting. Think about Star Wars. Luke does not fall to the dark side. That's a part of what makes him the hero. So, if we had a scene that Jamin was struggling with a fear of zombies or getting into conflict with zombies, like Na-yeon did early on, that would have been nice. Now, this is right before I get to my problems section, but I thought it was a good time to add this in because I was talking about Jamin. So after she bolts, there's a scene of her running in front of the school. I think it's in front of the school? It doesn't really matter. Zombies are just running into her, and she's not getting bitten or even getting jumped on. Now, I know it's raining and zombies in this show don't function well in the rain, but this is a problem not just here, but for other parts of the show as well. Zombies will just full on run into people, knocking them down, but not take advantage of this. Like, for some reason, zombies will want to bite people in the neck or the face over a leg or an arm, which to me just feels more vulnerable than your neck. She gets attacked by Kyung-soo, the one who got killed by Na-yeon. Kyung-soo knocks Chung-sun's mom down and is crawling after her, but does not bite her leg. He ends up biting her neck. Another thing, zombies are shown to be fully willing to all-out sprint out windows, but zombies won't sprint into doors or be more aggressive against those glass panels in some of the rooms the kids are in. It's a bit strange. There's inconsistencies with some of this stuff, but it's not so glaring that the show is just terrible. I guess I'll go over some of my other problems with this show. Let's start with the time it takes for people to turn into zombies. This is one of the most inconsistent parts of the show. The time it takes for a character that is important to turn is way longer and more dramatic than some random person. Now, I'll give some charity here because this helps with the emotional weight to some of the character deaths, but this is so inconsistent it's hard not to notice. Some random person gets bit and turns in like 10 seconds. Then an important character gets bit and it takes like 2 minutes. The other thing is, only important characters get to talk before they turn. So we have Chung-sun's friend, Kyung-soo, who turns and starts to feel the effects of the virus on him, which is fear that turns into anger, which gets pointed at the girl who infected him with the zombie blood. Then he fully turns and attacks. Now we see plenty of people who get thrown to the zombies and end up turning, but we don't get any of these fear to anger effects on these kids, who should be pissed off and extra mad when the virus anger effects start working. Another thing I found to be a bit out of place was near the end of episode 4, where Anjo's dad was holding off all the zombies in the stairwell. What was confusing to me was all the zombies just get jammed on the stairs, and only one manages to go after Anjo's father. He just ends up walking up the stairs very tired, and the show gets to give you the impression that he got bit. One thing I found to just not sit right with me is after Namra's bit, not her or anyone else in the group managed to make the observation that zombies don't attack people with the mutated virus. No one in the group figures this out, even though they know Guinam is out there with the same abilities. I know there is no real direct interaction where Namra just doesn't get attacked by zombies, but I still think someone in the group should have at least been thinking about this and brought it up. It could have been brought up and everyone just decides it's best for Namra to just not risk it. The reason I bring this up is the writers did a good job making these characters pretty smart and problem solvers. This is in part why these characters are so interesting in the first place. So I mention this as a problem because I liked these characters, and I think they would have figured this out. As well, it would have been interesting to see what plans they all would have come up with with knowing one of them won't get mobbed by zombies. Now, I do have a bit of a problem, where an aspect that I like might also have an effect on something that I dislike about the show. What's the thing I like? The main group of kids, this being the group with Chung-sun and Anjo. What I did not like was that several times throughout the show it felt like everything at the school was going too slow and time could have been used better. There is plenty of time that the kids are just sitting in the various rooms they end up in and don't end up doing anything. Now, I think both these things can be true. The kids in the school can still be the best, most interesting characters in the show, and also these characters could have been doing more. You might ask, what else could these kids do at the school? I would respond with food, like more than just the one protein or granola bar that was shared between all the kids. Earlier on in the show, Namra, because she's the smart one, tells the group that people will die without water for 3 days and food for 2 weeks. Now the kids get water on the second day and get one protein bar. What the show does not tell us is that people start to deplete if you don't get what your body needs to run. What I would have done is have the kids go on another mission, like when Sui-hook and Chung-sun go get the phone, or when Anjo and the nerd go get the drone. Some of the kids could go get food or something to drink. This would help break up all the lulls in the show surrounding all the best characters in the show. Now, I have talked a lot about how all the characters at the school are the most interesting to me. So what about all the characters not at the school? Well, they're just not as interesting. Now, this is in part because these characters outside the school are just not as developed. As well, when the outside characters interact with each other, it's mostly just off-putting and kind of a joke. The one character I'm thinking of is the streamer who goes to the city to see if zombies are actually there. This character is both interesting and bad because someone would try and do this if a zombie outbreak happened. But this character is also meant as just comedic relief and just stayed around in the story for too long. The detective who investigates the teacher who made the virus is pretty interesting. He gets told by the teacher about the computer that has the information on it about the virus. Now, this is where it all goes a bit sideways. The detective, while trying to get to the military, ends up running into all the characters outside the school. This adventure takes like half the series and mostly is just the detective telling a cop with him that he's a coward. I'm exaggerating a bit here, but this definitely could have been sped up. It's not that what happens outside the school is not important, but it could have been done a lot faster. Something that I found to be very good with this show is at the end of episodes something will happen that will make you want to watch the next episode. This is a part of what drew me in to this show. I watched a bunch of the show at night and ended up not going to sleep and watching this instead. Some examples of this are at the end of episode 4, where Chung-sun is running away from Guinam and he throws a knife at him. Then the episode ends. This was a really good way to end the episode. Then the next episode starts with the knife, because it's not a throwing knife and the balance is not the same. The knife handle just ends up slapping Chung-sun in the back. The next impressive thing is at the end of episode 8, where Guinam is climbing up the side of the school to get to the roof where the main group of kids are. A fight starts and Chung-sun is put in danger, and then the episode ends. The next starts with the rest of the fight. This is the first show in a long time that I actually felt compelled to watch the next episode. I'll cover my last and biggest concern, which is it almost seems like a certainty that this show will get a second season. Why would this be a concern if I like the show? Well, first, I just learned when looking up if there will be a second season is All of Us Are Dead is based on a webtoon called Now at Our School, and all its source material is used up. That's the first problem. The second is what can the second season do that the first already did? What new story can be told? All the unique elements that this show had, like zombies getting taken out with hits to the neck, and the half-zombie, half-humans, these things can only be a surprise once. None of this really matters though. The fact is it seems the show did well, so money, which means a second season. Let's look at what happens at the end of the show. So Namra, at the end, runs off because she's struggling with whether or not to eat people. The rest of the kids end up at a quarantine facility for months. Anjo has been sneaking out to make a memorial to all the people that were lost throughout the show. When she goes to visit the memorial one time, she sees a light from the top of the school that all the kids were trapped in. Anjo goes back and gets Sui-hook, and the two of them are supposed to go, but then the whole group ends up going. Earlier in the show, when the kids were on the roof of the school, a fire is made, and the kids sit around and talk. It's all very wholesome. But Namra starts talking about why she was so distant throughout school, and how she would like to do this again after they all get out. So when all the kids show up to the school to see what the light is, we find out Namra was alive and okay. Namra then tells us there are many students from the school, and she implies other people from the city that turned into mutant zombies and are surviving somewhere. Then Namra just says the others, meaning the mutant zombies she's with, are close by. Then Namra jumps off the roof. All the others are left standing there and have surprised Pikachu face. So the two options here are the kids were somehow surprised to see their friend who they know has super strength jump off the roof, or someone who we thought was dead, like Chung-sun, is not dead and is just a half zombie. These, I think, are the two most likely options. This show was set for the Stranger Things problem. This is, the first season is good, and it has a good story and does not waste the audience's time, and it should have been ended after the first season, but wasn't. So the next seasons become more and more sloppy and are really just making it on the accomplishments of the first. This is one of those instances I hope I'm wrong, because I like this show. I would love to see these actors reprise their roles and see the story continue and be good, but I just don't see it as likely. So if you can't tell, there's a lot of stuff happening in this show. I was able to condense down my original 50-minute rambling and also double the topics I had originally talked about. When the script was at about 4,000 words, I felt like I was close to done and just had to put the finishing touches on it. Somehow those finishing touches took 1,000 more words. This is a part of what I like about All of Us Are Dead. There's a lot going on, and I did not even cover everything I possibly could have. There are so many characters going through different things. It's interesting to see how all these characters are dealing with probably the most difficult decisions they'll ever have to make. But the show also has some problems that I've laid out. Now you might be wondering, what does this man actually think about this show? Well, wonder no longer. I like it. It's not perfect. I hope I've made that clear. But I also hope that I've made it clear this show has many cool and interesting aspects. Hence why I made this video. So, what are my final thoughts? Well, this show is no Band of Brothers, my favorite TV show, or even the first season of Game of Thrones, or the first season of Stranger Things. It has pacing problems. Probably one aspect to me that stands out is what really separates the average from the good and the good from the great. As well, there are some writing problems. But at this point with the state of entertainment, this show does stand out. Why? Well, most of all, it's just fun. As well, it's a new IP, which is something at this point I think everyone is looking for. If for some reason you're still watching this and have not seen the show, well, do it. You most likely won't be disappointed, even though I've spoiled a lot of it at this point.